By 1989, the Transformers was on very shaky ground. The Sunbow cartoon had concluded with the lackluster Rebirth miniseries, and the Marvel Comics were going to be coming to an end very soon. By 1989-1990, the toy line had shifted focus from regular Transformers to Micromasters and Action Masters, a less than inspiring assortment. 1990 would mark the last year of the toy line in North American markets. The Transformers didn't end with a bang, but with a whimper. Unless, of course, you were on the other side of the Atlantic. Rolling back here, the Transformers toy line didn't start in Europe until 1985. This is due to a myriad of import and export reasons, and by the time the legalese were sorted out, distribution was handled by a myriad of different companies. Milton Bradley in Central Europe, Jeeg in Italy, IGA in Spain, etc., etc. By the late 1980s, Hasbro had finally streamlined the distribution process in Europe, and they are planning on relaunching the brand in Chinese markets as well as New Zealand and Australia. Dusting off some of these old toolings gave Hasbro the opportunity to revitalize the brand in Europe as well, with the Gold Box reissues. These reissues of classic toys and evergreen characters was exactly what Hasbro needed to keep the toy line relevant in the European market. To keep up with this momentum, Hasbro decided they needed to go all out and made exclusive toys for European distribution. These would culminate in a series of bright, eye-catching figures that still have a mystique to this day: the Autobot Turbo Masters and the Decepticon Predators. Released exclusively in European markets in 1992, this is Decepticon Predator Stalker. And I'm not gonna lie, Predator Stalker is a pretty dark name. I mean, sounds like a bad guy, so maybe to lighten things up, the Netherlands decided to name him Scope Master Buzzard. Contrast to his avian teammates, Stalker is landlocked, transforming into this eye-catchingly garish teal and maroon ICBM launcher, which, in my opinion, is one of the most menacing alt modes for a Transformer. I mean, Megatron might turn into a gun, but Stalker literally has the existential dread of nuclear annihilation on his back. This might be undercut a little bit by the fact that he looks like if the Soviet Union was controlled by the Pet Shop Boys, but that's not really a bug. That's more of a feature, in my opinion.
That's part of the ride. That's part of the it's a feature. It's a feature.
The main gimmick of the Decepticon Predators was the Mega Visor. The large field commanders, Stalker and Skyquake, had these large scopes, with Stalkers being shaped like an ICBM, and Skyquakes being the entire rear of the SR-71 Blackbird-style jet. The smaller Predator jets had film slides inside of them, and you could mount the jets onto the Mega Visors so you could view them. It's a little bit of an esoteric gimmick and not a super intuitive one either, but it does take advantage of this newfangled technology called light piping. It might seem like old hat now, but the Predators were among the first G1 figures to introduce light piping into the toy line. Stalker's ICBM scope used light piping to illuminate both the slide within it as well as any of the accompanying slides from the mounted Predators. But the light piping can be seen even better in robot mode. The neon colors seen in alt mode carry over here and are accented by new patches of goldish bronze. While engineering and design changed considerably from 1984 to 1992, I'd argue that aside from the colors, Stalker is quintessentially G1, with the design sensibilities being much more streamlined and standardized when compared to the experimental figures of the post-movie era. Much like the rest of Generation 1, Stalker's engineering prioritizes function over form, as virtually all of the figure's moving parts only do so for transformation, so he doesn't really have any articulation outside of the shoulders. Now, when it comes to accessories, everything kinda pales in comparison to the thermonuclear warhead on his shoulder, but he has a cute little radar array, as well as 5 neon green missiles for this hand cannon, which we will not use whatsoever. Why is that? Well, that's because the spring-loaded cannon is made of gold plastic. This might be the first time we've talked about it on the channel, but gold plastic syndrome, or GPS, refers to the gold or metallic plastic used on Transformers toys around about the late 80s to early 90s. It's also used on some other toys from around the same time. On a chemical level, the metallic flake used to accent this plastic to give it the metallic sheen, typically bronze or gold, doesn't bind properly to the polymer, and instead the metallic flake acts like an adjutant. So in a relatively short amount of time, due to poor chemical binding, the gold or bronze plastic becomes incredibly brittle, and this is of course exacerbated by age. There are a few notable gold plastic toys and Transformers. For example, Electro from G2 and Randy from Beast Wars Neo are made almost entirely of gold plastic. Leader of the Turbo Masters Thunderclash, as well as Black Zarak from Super God Master Force, also use gold plastic in highly stressful positions, specifically the feet, so all of the gravitational strain is put on the most fragile and delicate plastic. And gold plastic syndrome isn't just limited to the Transformers, it's just most notable with the Transformers since it's such a tactile toy line. Serpentor from G.I. Joe: A Real American Hero is made almost entirely of gold plastic, as is Saurod from the Masters of the Universe toy line. The Battle Beast weapons are also made of gold plastic and can be pretty brittle, as well as the crack pipe that Reese has in Kenner Star Wars. One of the worst examples comes from the Outlaw in Kenner Mask, as these large plastic missiles are made from, that's right, gold plastic. These European G1 toys were some of the first to introduce gold plastic into the toy line, and all of the Predator guns are made from it. To make matters worse, Skyquake, the leader of the Predators, has the entire rear section of his jet mode made of gold plastic. It is heavy, it's delicate, and a stress point, as this is where the small Predator jets are meant to mount. Gold plastic isn't always a death sentence in toys, but just, don't ever fuck with it. Luckily, the gold plastic and bronze accents that you see on Stalker's robot mode are actually paint and sticker decals, meaning the toy is not going to self-destruct. Now, Stalker hasn't appeared in fiction. The majority of his character comes from the toy bio, and there he is described as the Predator's communications specialist, able to scramble and encrypt both the Predator's communications and the Autobots' communications. His quote on the box is, "Hate till it hurts, and then hate some more," which feels right at home with some Courtney. He did make some comic book appearances in the IDW series. Early on in the Civil War, Stalker was one of the Decepticon lieutenants in charge of the Grindcore prison camp, and then later in the IDW chronology, we'd see him pick up his hobby of enhanced interrogation at the Garrus 9 prison complex. This is during the Last Stand of the Wreckers miniseries, where Overlord and the Decepticon Predators occupied the Garrus 9 prison complex and turned it into an absolute hellscape. Yeah, the IDW comics are fun, they're strange, they're whimsical, and they have their charming moments, but when they go grimdark, they go really grimdark. And I will say that IDW Comics' Last Stand of the Wreckers probably introduced a good portion of American fans to these European exclusive toys. Pyro, Iron Fist, Rotor Storm, Stalker, they all had spotlights in Last Stand of the Wreckers. And another interesting note that comes from this is the fact that IDW gave an explanation for Stalker's extremely neon color scheme. At some point early in the war, the Decepticon Predators were sent to occupy the Skull-Malak territories. This was a large gas nebula bordered by a dying star. These two elements caused the color spectrum and light spectrum to get pretty wild, and the Predators had to adapt to it. But you know what? Let's say you're not brave enough to change your colors into neon. Well, you're in luck, because Hasbro imported the figure in the USA for 1997's Machine Wars. While I do plan on doing a video dedicated to the entire Machine Wars toy line, seeing as it's such an odd moment in Transformers, we're just going to take a peek at the Machine Wars Soundwave. No longer clad in bright neon, the Machine Wars Soundwave instead trades it in for a drab maroon, dark gray, and green highlights. This toy is much more industrial in its aesthetic, and that does carry over into robot mode, where these colors coalesce and combine into a figure that looks like it just lumbered from behind the Iron Curtain. Outside of the color scheme, the other major changes come in his accessories. The Mega Visor has been gutted, leaving the ICBM essentially hollow, and the missile launcher is gone due to safety regulations. While the missile launcher is gone, he does still come with the neon green missiles, which I do like because it does give the figure a nice shock of color to break up this drab mechanical look. Stalker is very iconic, and he's very indicative of the European G1 aesthetic. He's bold, he's brash, he's blocky, he is eye-catching, and he commands your attention. He is this pretty little hate machine that is among the best that G1 had to offer.